We are here to connect. You see, I want us to think back that that is something that we need to do among the African diaspora and also the Africans in Africa. Is we need to expand on exactly what we are doing now, which is the telling of our story, the connection, the listening to ourselves. Because it helps us to heal. Breezy was talking about that just now, how she uses story in this life. Looking at, for example, what has happened during the COVID-19. You see, at the end of the apartheid regime, and also at the end of the genocide in Rwanda, people were brought together to listen, to talk. Because talking to one another helps us to heal ourselves. For several thousands of years in Africa, when there is a conflict, the elders will sit down and bring both the offender and the offend to talk. Do you know that the idea of going to prison is something that is not even very popular among Africa, but we always have a way of healing. The healing part is important. We need to heal ourselves. It is not just enough to say, that person has committed a crime, let's shoot him. That is not our way of life. We have to look for a way to heal ourselves, irrespective of where we find ourselves. And for those of us in the diaspora, this is particularly important. We are going through a tremendous amount of stress. Sometimes, in the first book from this series, not in the storytelling series, but in the series itself that led me to this, which is the research about the African presence in Italy, I said one time, looking at the experiences of why people usually go to the church to pray. I said in the book, you don't need to look at it as just going to pray. Look at this as people going together to fight against something. What are they fighting against? They are fighting against solitude. Because in Europe, okay, I'm in Europe, maybe that is why I'm reflecting more about Europe, but I believe it's the same, even if you were to be in Canada or in the United States, we are alone in most of the cases because the way the system is set up, because we are not in charge of the system, because we are not in control of it, it isolate us a lot. It makes us being alone. So the only way we can sort of unify ourselves and be strong and be there for each other is to hear each other, is to listen to each other, is to embrace each other. Because we need this for ourselves, to tell our story and to listen to ourselves. This is how we are going to heal ourselves. Anyway, I could really go on and on this because it touches my soul. Because this is the very heart of what we are doing here, of sharing the story. It's not just about statistics, not just about because I want to tell you that I have written a book. That is not the essence. The essence is exactly listening to one another. And we need more platform to be able to do that, because as we are doing that, we are healing ourselves, listening just to ourselves. Before I give the room to Gloria Tino, I want Isu to say something relating to the topic of today. And also, this is in line with what Dorothea is saying, the connection. Isu, what do you say about how TED Talk uses storytelling to build connection with the audience? Because I was saying before that I love TED Talk because of the connection, because when I listen to the story, it touches me. Tell me about that, because you are really at the center of this.
All right, so when the word TED is mentioned, or TED Talk is mentioned across the globe, the reason TED has grown to the point it has grown is because they understand the power of using story to project ideas. They understand the power of using stories to explain the concepts of businesses and the operations of businesses. The reason TED has got into many nations across the globe is because TED was built on the formation of ideation, and ideation is incomplete without storytelling. So this is why, if you're a business here, if you run a business, you are an individual, you want to reach out to many people, the use of storytelling cannot be overemphasized. It cannot be downcasted. Like everything that talks about excelling in business excelling in any formation of analysis you want to talk about, you cannot extract storytelling from it. So what I'm saying in essence is this: for the years I have curated TEDx, and like I mentioned when we started, I'm going to be curating another TEDx event before December, and I'm considering that Zimbabwe, Namibia, or Nigeria. I've curated over 7, counting. What I realized is that the best of TED Talks were TED Talks that were delivered with 80% of stories and 20% of information. 80% of stories and 20% of information on a general basis of statistics, data, and formative analysis. But the rest of it were stories. Now, I also realized that the best of TED Talks were TED Talks that were delivered on the basis of personal experiences. There is a difference between a story and a personal story. When you talk about personal stories, you're being vulnerable. You're relating yourself to people for people to connect with you. And when you talk about stories, you can now talk about Obehi's story, you can talk about Dr. Dorothea's story, you can talk about Nuela's story, you can talk about Reese's story, Gloria's story. But then let's ask you the question: what about your own personal story? So as an investigative journalist, one of the things I have realized is that when you tell a story, people resonate. But when you tell a personal story, people resonate more. So TED and TEDx understands the power of sharing stories, especially personal stories, and comprehensively stories that has to do with people, authentic stories. So that will be my response to that. So if you're a business owner here, invest in mastering how to share the vision of your business, utilizing